Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Pinball Arcade. So last time we did TX Sector, I believe is the name of the table. The worst table by far that I've seen. Today we're doing Taxi. Now what's strange about Taxi is it's yet another table that if you had asked me I would have said, oh yeah, this has got to be late 70s, mid 70s table. Which probably highlights how in the 80s, pinball was kind of relying on nostalgia a little bit more than you would think. Um, because, in comparison, like 88 would have been the hitting that 90s attitude era in TV and movies way more than what you see in pinball tables. Taxi, this is another classic designed by Mark Ritchie and Python Angelo. Players are given the role of being a taxi driver who must pick up a crazy cast of characters, including the former USSR leader Mikhail Gorbachev, Gorby, Santa Claus, Dracula, Lola, and Pinbot, which I think half of those characters are probably references to other tables that maybe they made. We're also starting to see that Mark Ritchie and Python Angelo are pretty much the names of the business for the 80s. They did a good job in their products and they managed to uh, get their names out there way more than a lot of other table designs. We've seen plenty of table histories where they haven't even bothered to mention who had made the table when it would be fairly obvious that that would be a standard thing you would like to know, that and the number of units sold. But in this instance, the number of units sold is not being mentioned. Continuing on, in addition to its fun theme and clearly presented objectives, the game features non-stop action, a taxi meter, fast figure eight ramps, and an exciting spin out skill shot. And really, a table like this, you could probably go a lot further into detail. Unfortunately, no pro version here, so we can't look at the table. Um, but yeah, there's probably another paragraph or two at minimum to say. We are back to the Williams yellow ugly flippers. The backboard is very colorful. The scoreboard is back to its usual position of being at the bottom of the backboard compared to uh, one table we saw earlier where it was uh, actually at the very, very top of the backboard so that more people could see it. Although that is a smarter idea, it wouldn't have caught on because it would have required more drilling as far as the wooden backboards are concerned, and just more work. So, if I recall correctly, you basically have to spell cab each time to pick up each of the um, characters. And each individual character, passenger, I think eventually moves you towards a final jackpot. We can see on the right there's a skill shot that has a funnel at the top, and that spin out will give you a certain number of points for the certain number of times it spins, I believe. And I'm not even sure how mechanically it did that. There's a basic uh, um, target on the far left and far right. This is a very balanced table. Now it does have three um, slanted drop down targets for Lola at the front, but they kind of are angled in a decent way so that they're not going to bounce the ball towards the center lane. But you will, on this table, have to get very good at shooting the far left, and then the mid left, and then the center left lanes, and then the exact same far left, far right, mid right, and center right lanes. This is kind of a great table, frankly, because it doesn't. It almost has complete bilateral symmetry, and if you shoot the center lanes, then the ball will drain directly into the in lane of the other side of the flipper, so you can do a full figure 8 with the table, which is nice. Let's go ahead and look at the flyer and then start playing. I'm kind of itching to play. It is also fairly crazy that you would make a game around a taxi driver, and I can only assume that it is somewhat inspired by, or if maybe at some point it was actually going to be a licensed product for the movie Taxi. But you also are seeing kind of the benefit of these tables not being based on movies or anything like that, because this game still fairly makes sense. Now, in all fairness, I imagine kids will not recognize Lola if there is a character named Lola that's supposed to be like a femme fatale character, and they probably won't recognize Gorbachev either. But otherwise, the kids would just assume those are some weird, funny characters to balance out Santa Claus and Dracula and Pinbot. There is also, I suppose, a point here that this is pretty much the first table to go political in any way, with maybe the exception of the Hot Pursuit game where you were running from the police. I guess you could make an argument that might be slightly anti-police, and thus that might slightly be political, but that's a bit of a stretch. Our standard goals are to pick up Pinbot, activate carry passengers, collect a joyride reward, activate multi-ball, and earn the extra ball. So either picking up Pinbot is fairly easy and the others are fairly hard, or there's something more to it, and I must have hit the wrong the skin button again. And for this skill shot, you pretty much need to figure it out. Yeah, it must be a magnetic. It has to be a magnetic sensor on the spin out at the top there. That's not really what you're looking for. I'm gonna get just enough to almost hit that. Well, this is the first time we've actually gotten the ball stuck. We'll just nudge it out of the way. We do have lane changes on both the left and right. Huh. Now this is a table that once again has so there's it's fairly hard to lock the balls in the left and right, far left and far right areas because of because there's bumpers between those. Man, I went to scratch my nose and the ball drained while I was doing that. That was a problem. You can kind of see how if you just remove the bumpers, you would do better. So that's how you pick up Pinbot, is you have to get the bonus to spin around towards that center light, which really means that having, like, you should really just put full force behind it. So I think what we're targeting right now is either to go up the other lane on the mid-center ramp to start a multi-ball, or do something else to pick up Lola and Gorbachev. I had 2 out of the 4, or I suppose 2 out of the 5 passengers. Oops, forgot to change the skin back again. You get a slightly better bonus in points wise if you just manage to spin it, but that is a fairly random experience to spin out, so it's not really something you want to worry too much about. You can see that right out lane is built a little too around the idea of making it easy to drop the ball and drain the ball. Alright, that was a spin out times 2, by the way, because there's 2 balls on the table. This would be themed around something like Crazy Taxi later on. But I don't think Crazy Taxi came out until like the mid-90s. This is arguably a somewhat easier table than a lot of the other ones we've seen. This is like a really good kids table, although I don't know if it really has a kickback, and I don't see a center peg, and I don't really see a ball saver, so it still has some frustrations. And if you were a very young kid and didn't even understand the concept that the tables did have goals, then I imagine this might be a fairly boring table. Boy, do I still wish you could just, when you drain out that quickly, I wish there was a quicker way to quick load a save state or exit out and start over again. Although in all fairness, you're almost always in a practice mode of some sort when playing pinball. So even if you did have 2 really bad balls, you still should play that last third ball and just be a good sport about it, even if you're just playing on the emulated version. So that was Lola we just picked up. Or I think that was, we picked her up, yep. Now I don't think there's a passenger hold, and I'm not sure that this table could handle a passenger hold. Nor do I have a direct explanation as far as what increases the score multiplier. Five good shots though are all you really need, and you'll capture most of the passengers. And it's not a super high scoring table either, because the goals are a little bit more focused. One of the things that makes this kind of a great table is that there literally are only 3 drop-down targets on the entire table. They're there to remind you that they exist as a feature, but they're not there to overwhelm you with 8 to 12 of them. And then just 3 top lanes with lane selects. And then this is totally a table all about the ramps. There are sinker targets, but they're hidden in such a way that they don't ever shoot the balls out except for during multi-ball, which makes it a much safer experience. Now it's Santa Claus in particular that is one of the hardest shots. Because there's a decent chance you're gonna accidentally lose the ball or hit the bumpers. There's Santa Claus, which means the jackpot is lit, which means I don't know what this music is supposed to indicate. I guess I was supposed to hit the Dracula's sinkhole, and I didn't do that. There was the jackpot. So yeah, just keep on looking for the Santa Claus slot to load a jackpot down. You can kind of see how there's nothing really flashing right now, which makes it very easy to understand what they want you to do, I suppose. We're back to picking up the passengers. Which could make a table like this somewhat boring if you get really good at picking up the passengers and getting the jackpots and getting the multi-balls. I'm fairly certain there is a three-story 3-ball multi-ball on this table. I'm not 100% sure what you need to do it though. So I earned an extra ball a different way. Instead of lighting extra ball. This is a nice introductory skill shot table, because you can basically get the skill shot and be made aware that you earned a skill shot without actually knowing how to earn a skill shot. Plus it's super easy, you just pull the plunger back all the way and you have a decent chance of succeeding. I would say those top lanes, the A, B, C, D, are a little tight, so you're not managing to shoot the balls So it wants me to hit that Dracula area. And I did, but the ball bounced back anyways. And with that, I have done all the standard goals. I like the music, I like the sound effects. I don't like that I drained out 2 balls there, but that doesn't happen that often. I'm glad there isn't a sound effect that plays every single time a flipper is pulled. That was a ridiculous feature that we saw in a previous table. Like, there is this problem though that kind of makes me sad in that I'm too good at this table. I've played this table a lot. I like this table. It's a great table. It's probably in the top 10 of tables. I'm not going to try to rank all the pinball tables, but I'm just so good at it that, like, I'm going to immediately fail. And now we've got a glitch with the simulation where I've either accidentally started a new game, or it just wanted me to shoot a extra ball for no reason. I think I'm gonna have to exit this program. It's getting glitchier and glitchier by the second. And see, this is definitely stuff that should have been fixed. There's no reason that this should be happening where I'm basically playing a 4-player game, it looks like, but I can't pull the flippers. And see, all I was trying to do is hit just the A button to move along. This isn't some kind of special mode. Not that nothing I've ever seen or heard of. And even if it was a special mode, it would still be programmed wrong. Notice the wide variety in scores by just having one ball spin out. And I can't do anything. I can't press the start button. I can bring up the mouse. And that's about it. Yeah, that somehow started a new game. Alright, well, if that's the case, then let's just stop the program and launch the program again, because I basically can't pull off anything until that does happen. Maybe the game just did need a relaunch. Standard goals. No way. It didn't save any of that information. And I clicked the stop button on Steam too. Well, I guess that's nice, because then that does give me an excuse to come back and play the game a little bit more, but I mean, there's no way to not just call that glitchiness. Unacceptable levels of glitchiness. And so, yeah, I would hope that Pinball FX3 would have Taxi, and that it would play as good, if not better. And Ideally, the one thing that I won't get it would be for them to detect that I had already purchased the table in Pinball Arcade, and thus they would do me the kindness of giving me a license on Pinball FX3 instead of rebuying the tables. There are some places where the ball does get somewhat close to draining out, so you want to be somewhat careful around that. This is a table that I wouldn't ever dare modify if I owned, but if I were going to, I would change the Williams flippers to white flippers, and I would put a center peg in it. Programming it to have like a ball saver feature is probably impossible, or at least very difficult. There is a issue that you might run into in 2021 with a table like this, in the fact that this is like a New York taxi cab weirdo that happens to not be Middle Eastern. When you run into a catch-22 there, you can either be accused of propagating stereotypes by having the taxi cab driver not be Middle Eastern in an area like New York, where it almost certainly would be a Middle Eastern person, or you run into the stereotype of know your whitewashing history and having a non-Middle Eastern person play the role of a what would be probably a Middle Eastern person. It's even saying that most taxi cab drivers in New York are Middle Eastern is a stereotype. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Of course, you could make other complaints if you were just trying to cancel a pinball table, like why is Lola the only female character that we've seen on most tables, and anytime we see any other female characters on tables, why are they usually objects of sexual desire? Or Gorbachev, for instance, and Santa Claus and Dracula are not. At least when you're talking about a table like Centaur, there is a guy in a loincloth next to the lady in the loincloth bikini. At least that's equal opportunity lewd imagery. Of course, in '88, dealing with those kinds of problems hadn't even begun. I guess there is some drop downs right on the far right at that newsstand. I didn't even see those. I once again have to complain about this table in particular not having Pro mode. Although if you did have ball control mode in this, you probably would accomplish a significant amount of the goals and then run out of any ability to accomplish some of the other goals, because you wouldn't have enough power in ball control to actually get up the ramps. That's an example of the ball hitting a peg and bouncing backwards. And I don't know if you can just remove the pegs on a table and it would work, or if you'd have to make them smaller, or if there's a way you could put some kind of wedge. Like theoretically, if you could just put a wedge that is made of the same steel as the pinball, then neither one of them would particularly bend with the force you're hitting them at, and the ball would just either go to the left or to the right in the same way that it hits the outer parts of a ramp or curve and goes to the left or right. Instead of the pegs, which have cushioning on them to lose momentum and spring to them to push it back. I'm hitting some great shots there. I just hadn't set it up yet. You could certainly make a modern version of this table where you're a taxi cab driver and you're getting squeezed out by Uber and Yelp and all the ride-sharing apps, which I think there's some limitation to those technically existing in New York anyways. Of course, the whole taxi thing in New York is crazy anyways. It's a half step towards having better public transportation, and it would be fairly easy for them to just install more buses and remove taxis from the equation. You could easily have a bus that just goes straight up the long streets of New York City 24/7, and then when it hits the end, it turns around and goes down. And if you eliminate the whole money thing element of the buses, I would make New Yorkers a little bit happier. Because basically that's all they need is a treadmill that goes up and down or left and right, since New York is so grid-based. So if you had something like a tram car that was moving fairly slowly and you could just hop on and hop off, that would work fairly nicely. And then you could probably make a center lane for emergency vehicles only, and like one-time use permitted vehicles for deliveries of large-scale objects. Well, this kind of sucks that I lost that progress. I may not have enough beginner's luck back in me to quickly succeed on all the standard quests again. Which may not matter, because there may just be a straight up glitch here that makes it crash like every time you play or every time you high score. There goes the multi-ball. That newsstand on the right is kind of annoying. I would have adjusted that slightly. I think I'm gonna get an extra ball if I just get a decent enough score here. And on this table, the bumpers are just lit. You could have put in like an expert mode on this table and made it so you have to shoot the lanes or do something to light the bumpers first. To increase the score. There's probably some of that you could have done in general to improve the scoring and make this a higher scoring table. Does it matter that it's a low scoring table though? Or is that just a complaint that only an expert pinball player would complain about? Like, I don't think a little kid would complain that they only got 100,000 points instead of 100 million. If anything, this kind of scoring feels like a throwback. I would probably have tried to slow down the ball a little bit there on the figure 8. Because it does seem like the figure 8 drains into the left in lane fairly quickly. Okay. Click Joyride and extra ball again still. Well, this is gonna suck because we'll probably play 1 or 2 more games, and there's a decent chance I won't be able to finish the standard goals again. Of course, if you wanted to do the goals again, well, you could probably delete your save file and you'd be fine with that and still have like all the licenses to all the tables you bought. But you wouldn't be able to re-earn the achievements part of it on Steam if that mattered, which we're down to 245 achievements that needing to be collected if I was going to try and get them all. So that number is not going down quickly. As an example of my incredibly slow delay to nudge. I imagine most kids today would have never even ridden a taxi, maybe never even seen a taxi. So you might have to modernize a table like this just to make it make more sense. You could call it Joyride or Caravan, Carpool. I guess ideally a carpool sequel to this would be an interesting take, where it was just a collection of 4 or 5 new crazy characters, possibly from the Williams collection of pinball tables, which we should look at the Williams tables and see what that could really be. Like, you could get Bride of Pinbot, obviously, or Jackbot. Let's just go back and see. Arcade by manufacturer. So if you were going to make a new pinball table, you could have the Black Knight. Dracula was already there. Pinbot was already there. This is Bride of Pinbot, though. You could do that. I think these are alphabetical. You could do Gorgar instead of Gorbachev, and that would be way better as a character anyways. You could do one of the characters from Monster Bash, different from Dracula, I suppose. You could do Jackbot if you didn't want to do Bride of Pinbot. You couldn't probably do Spanish Star Trek or Terminator. And I'm not sure there's anybody else that you would really recognize. But yeah, I think you could easily Cyclone, the clown from Cyclone. Bride of Pinbot is 2. Gorgar is 3. A different monster from the Monster Bash series is 4. And then Space Shuttle, maybe? Or Black Knight, it would be 5. So, yeah. You could definitely make a modern taxi table if you wanted to.
Ooh, taxi. Ooh, taxi.
Seems like every time I load in and load out with this, it changes the skin on this table. I feel like Taxi may have been the very first table that Pinball Arcade programmed, and thus the particular glitchiness that seems to exist on this table. Of course, I could just be salty because I lost progress. Like, ideally in the emulation, this would be making like RAM saves every couple minutes, or particularly with like NVRAM drives and SSDs. It wouldn't be crazy to try and use up a computer's entire collection of RAM to have different save states and a playback buffer to rewind to a previous time. And yet none of that is there. I guess that kind of highlights also the difference between what you really want in emulation versus what emulation meant even 10 years ago. I don't know why that moved the camera up like that. That was fine, but weird. And I guess it's just gonna do that always. Is if we get a mystery reward. The spin out, I will say, is slightly confusing in that the ball will sometimes spin and not be counted because it didn't quite roll over the right place. I bet there probably is a skin that I could find. I should play with the skins a little bit more and see if there is something here that I could find that would contrast very nicely against the art and potentially make the game easier. Although I kind of have a hard time believing there would be anything much better than just the good old standard silver. While you do pick up the characters in this table and get reminded of them, they are not really important characters to the story. If there was an important character to the story, it would be the taxi driver himself. Which, this is basically the quietest taxi cab driver I've ever seen depicted in media. He seems to have no lines of dialogue or not say anything at all. Maybe when you hear the horn honking, that's supposed to represent the taxi cab driver, but nothing else seems to happen. If you were going to make a modern version of this, you'd probably have a radio select feature that had several different songs, so you could change the radio, or you would have a goal that changed the radio. Instead, you have each of the characters calling out for a taxi. Gorbachev is saying, "Hey, comrade, taxi." Pinbot is saying, "Taxi, taxi, taxi." Not even really sure how you get the multiplier up. So, if I was to get the standard goals, I feel like I'd probably then have to figure out, do you get the multiplier up by spelling cab, or do you get the multiplier up by doing something else? See, let's see what like this Doctor Who ball looks like. It seems like it's a clear pinball with a TARDIS in the middle of it. That's an interesting gimmick, but even for a Doctor Who table, that's not what I would really want. You can barely even see the edges of the pinball. That's the exact opposite of what you would want. You'd want to be able to clearly see it, and see, it would make a lot of sense that you could just pause the game and change the skin on the fly, but it won't let you do that. Even though you can change other options on the fly, like sound. I sure hope I didn't pay too much for the pinball skins. And there's still plenty of pinball skins I could buy if I was just really motivated to support FarSight Studios. I don't know what they could do though to catch my fandom like that. They'd have to make a lot of promises about updating their software and getting the licenses back. And I wouldn't be surprised if FarSight Studios at some point does get the pinball license back, in that the Williams, Stern, and Bailey and all those companies basically bounced their license negotiations between two companies just to keep the negotiations in their favor. But yeah, they would have to promise some like DirectX 12 ray tracing technology. They'd have to be able to bring it up to probably a much newer version of Unity, assuming this is running on Unity, and if it isn't running on Unity, it should be. They'd have to be more focused on the PC version in particular, because there's a whole bunch of different versions of pinball games that are basically all the same. They just have different tables and different platforms they're on. But yeah, they have like, they have iPad versions, Android, iOS, things for every single console. Let's see. So anything clear like this is a no-go. Is this supposed to be the land, the big glass dome that Gallifrey is around? I don't even know. Then you have a light bulb, and then Uncle Fester. Then, yeah, these are Adam's Family things. Then you start to get to slightly more traditional balls, but a lot of them have single images instead of patterns, where they really would have to have a pattern more than anything, because that's the only thing you can see. This looks like this is inspired by Firepower. Some of these patterns, like a big white ball, might be worth trying instead of a silver ball. And this is definitely a table I don't want to put down. I want to keep on playing it. There definitely is something weird in the fact that you get a tip every time you pick somebody up instead of either getting that during the end of ball bonus or having it say Pinbot pickup or passenger pickup. If you wanted to overcomplicate this table, you would have had a different bonus for picking up each character that could have been raised in a different way. 5 different targets or drop-down targets to hit, or 15 potential drop-down targets to hit. Yeah, I don't think a white ball helps any different. It is very odd that the one thing you can customize here is just skins that they sold extra. Like nothing else. See, like this taxi table. This ball, for instance, would be the worst ball to play on the taxi table because it's the exact same color scheme as the table. It's gonna blend in a lot. I would be acing this table if it had a ball saver feature. Well, at least I feel like that would be the case. And since we don't know if we don't have a pro mode, we don't know if there's what, if anything, could have been adjusted on a table like this. I imagine they made these tables first and then got feedback as far as what pinball fans wanted emulated. But I still feel like there's a lot more that could have been done. There was a whole lockup and slowdown. Yep, we've seen that several times where the game has just completely slowed down in the middle of play. I'm not sure what is needed to lock the second ball, though, because I felt like I was doing pretty much everything, and all I could do was start the 2-ball multi-ball. So maybe there just isn't a 3-ball multi-ball on this table. I'll have to look at the instructions. I thought there was. It feels like there easily could be. Still trying to pick up Santa Claus and Lola. And I've been playing for like 54 minutes. Let's see, is there any other skin that I'd even want to... Like, maybe a golf ball might make sense. That actually would be incredibly contrasting. To just have pure blackness. That just feels really weird visually. Yeah, it feels like you might have a custom table that, or you might have a table that would have black balls if it was like a death metal theme or something like that. There's a noticeable lack of like rock and roll themed tables that I know some existed. There should be a Beatles table. There should be a like Aerosmith table. There should be a Kiss table. But yeah, each one of those would have required negotiating with two parties for a license instead of just one, which that would have been the next step that they would have liked to see, I'm sure, is more licensed tables. And Pinball Arcade claimed they had kind of figured out a financial way to have licensed tables by kickstarting it, and I guess Kickstarter didn't succeed, which I could pretty much tell you that's the truth for any project. But they definitely were going to Kickstarter again and again to get people to fund the development and the licensing of specific tables, and then selling it later. So maybe that is a major factor as to why Pinball Arcade developers pretty much gave up once they lost the license too, is because they had something that was measuring enthusiasm, and they saw that the enthusiasm had died down below a certain threshold. Which isn't to say that people don't like pinball games these days, it's just probably fewer people and fewer who are interested in lesser known tables. And I'm certainly guilty of that too. I couldn't easily name you a dozen more tables I'd like to see in this curation. And I guess as long as you don't get a high score, you're fine. A Klingon skin, a USS Federation skin. These skins are better, at least, because they mostly just textures. But yeah, none of them are particularly great. And we're still trying to get the special. During multi-ball, shoot the ball into the ball lock to lock it. Shoot the second ball into the track hole to score an express lane value of 300,000. The express lane value can be only scored once per multi-ball. Once the express lane value is scored up to hit the left or right ramp worth 100,000. You can also get the crossover bonus. To complete the crossover bonus, shot cradle ball on the left flipper and the right flipper, then shoot the left ramp and the right lamp at the same time to score the crossover bonus worth 250,000 points. Ooh, that would be pretty difficult to do. To get both balls to hit the gate at the beginning of those ramps near the same time, not exactly the same time. Once multi-ball ends, the ball will be like once another passenger is picked up. One other thing to note about multiplayer is that locked balls carry over from player to player. So in a multiplayer game, it's possible for a player to activate multi-ball using a ball locked from another player. But it does seem like it is just a 2-ball multi-ball. Which that's something I would have liked to see different. Although, this is... the beauty of this table is in its simplicity, so adding a third ball and more randomness, while intriguing, is not really necessary. That crossover shot would probably be easier if there were 3 balls in the multi-ball, and I imagine some other shots would be easier. Getting the ball to actually stop moving enough that I might be able to shoot it down the... yeah. Shoot it down that far left shot is... man. Some of the angles feel wrong on this table, and I don't know if that's because this is just kind of buggily programmed or if that's how the table really played. But the fact that the ball just went into the left in lane and then bounced into the left out lane seems wrong. Sadly, this almost makes an argument that you can have a good concept and a decent table and not have to really QA test it as much as you would think, and it still will succeed fairly well. Notice how this spin out acts as a jackpot-like experience without the effort that you have to do to get jackpots on other tables. The only difference, I suppose, is that normal jackpots grow much larger and are more difficult to earn by far. Well, I just wish I could keep on playing this, but I think I can give it maybe one more game and then we're going to have to call it a day. This will be a table that goes in the favorites, but you could also see that even as a table that I have said should be in the top 10, this probably is in the lower half of the top 10, and not one you're going to spend as much time on as some other tables. This is not a super complicated table with missions and different modes. You can activate pretty much everything always, which maybe for most tables that is the right way to build a table, instead of, say, Star Trek The Next Generation's table where you activate all kinds of different missions. And am I supposed to press a button when that happens? I'm not sure if I am or not. This is a table where getting good at flipping the ball to the other side could be useful too. Although I'm not really doing that. Although, you kind of don't need it on this table. Just shoot it up the lane, and it'll go in the in lane anyways. Fairly deadly slingshots.
Take the express lane.
So, could I get the crossover bonus? I would pretty much need something to go up a lane. And I'd have to get really good at shooting with real confidence and certainty. And I don't know if there's a real benefit for getting the crossover bonus now, other than showing off and getting a score. $2,200,000 for the extra ball. I've done it before, but it is pretty tough. Yeah. This is definitely a table that has some frustration to it. Even the match game is not particularly generous. We've seen other tables that would give you 2 or 3 replays. Well, that sucks that the outer interface glitched, but I guess I'll just leave it at that. That's Taxi. I was right to say I love it, but I'd also say it's a bit of a frustrating game if you're gonna have glitches. Let's see. This week just started, so let's not click and instead see if we can use the D-pad. So we made it into like the top 50, which that goes to show that there's a decent number of people still playing this table, where I was in like the top 20 with this table, I believe, in basically the same amount of time. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.